Let's see. Okay, that worked successfully. This is just a spam message that I started streaming. Let me get my dashboard up just in case someone wants to chat. Yeah. And we're going to try changing the OpenGL like he's been recommending. So we have a config JSON. And there's an option, I guess, for OpenGL in here somewhere. Fully sure. There. Let's look. All right, let's see. If we go to the, what is it? Client dev in the nel subdirectory. We get a binding with a bunch of different paths, and that's about it. And I don't see OpenGL or DirectX configured in here or here. Let me double check the quick start. OpenGL isn't mentioned in that. Let me think. I mean, we can search for the OpenGL library. It's in the, okay, so there's a driver field in some of these configs. Maybe he's meaning in the client config. Since typically when you start the environment, it runs the client directory is the build client bin release. There's no config file configured here though. Okay. This config doesn't have OpenGL or DirectX mentioned. I don't know where the client loads its config file from. I almost feel like it'd be in like app data. Yeah, so there's a client config that gets created in your roaming. And in this, I don't see an option though for OpenGL. Check in the client dev which folder it CDs into. There's a client config. So I did check that. Let me double check what you're saying though. Okay. So if we go back to the quick start and we go into the client dev, we can see that it CDs into the RC root pipeline client dev. That's technically a new path I haven't been to. So pipeline. Well, there is no client dev in this one. Let's go to the virtual machine. Let's open up a new window. Ryzom Core, pipeline, client dev, client config. I see. Now, which includes a client default. This sets the graphics driver. So in theory, I set this to OpenGL. Then we start the client up. And this is probably, we're just down the route of the virtual machine isn't beefy enough. Like it doesn't have a graphics pass through, but I mean, it has DirectX 12 installed at least. I could try installing the DirectX 9 runtime library, see if that helps. Alternatively, I could see if I can get it to work on the base machine. Because technically, if I take the 7-zip here, put this on my root C drive. Creelan, that's where I was having issues. I kind of stopped at that point. Apparently my VM just froze up and I don't even know why. Maybe it's because of the DirectX thing. Yes, DirectX runtime should work. Anyways, all right, so we're going to put this on my C drive. Oh, no, I'm still extracting. Never mind. I don't want to do that yet. I'll have to, well, no, it's still working. Okay, there it goes. Okay. So let's see if I can get the DirectX to work. Because we're currently here. And a driver for Direct3D Win not found. I'm pretty sure I have not installed the DirectX 9 dependencies yet. So let's work on that. Oops. I have this file. I can just put this into the VM. I've been putting a lot of these into where was that path? Right here. This is where I've been keeping a lot of the dependencies. There. If that drags, then I'll get the DirectX installed. Oh. Why did you fail? Normally don't fail that. Maybe I did it too quick. Yeah. Okay. So that's copying. While that copies, this finished extracting, so I can move this now to my C drive. All right, now we can run the installer. This is the June 2010 DirectX SDK. This is not the DirectX 9 runtime distribution files. I think you can just go for, it should include it. Okay, no worries then. So we'll wait on this. It's fine if the client doesn't run on my virtual machine. I just don't like how this dev environment commandeers my main computer. There's so many like subpaths and stuff that it generates. So I'm trying not to do that on my main machine. Even though I ran it for a little bit and got some weird mappings and stuff already. But we're going to try to keep it bare minimum. I'm curious, can I get this to execute on my main machine? So this is an interesting error that my roaming path isn't there. Because I have Ryzom here. But I do notice that on the virtual machine, is that because I installed Ryzom Live? That there's a conflict with that dev environment? I'm pretty sure that same path when I'm on this machine is more populated with files. No, I guess not. That looks okay. Wonder why it's telling me the file's not found. As the app data. So if it has it, well, it looks like I never fully set it up because like the pipeline directory doesn't exist. Because I'm pretty sure on this one, pipeline has, yeah, it has more files. So this is more just side effects because I didn't let it fully run. Yep. Okay. I'm not so worried about that. I was just seeing if I could sidestep it. Let's see if client dev works now. Oh, we got a screen flash. That's upgrade. Okay. Path not found for not exist UI font sans. Okay. UI font sans. So it's trying to find Noto sans TTF. And apparently that is not a existing file. So just driver issue might work. Yeah, it's a software file. Yeah, you're referring to what I just fixed. Perfect. Where is this file? It's in graphics fonts. You need to update the level design repository. Yeah, I never ran update, by the way. I've just taken the base quick start and I figured I don't need to update it yet because there's other headaches. But if I need to, I'm happy to do the, what is it, the config update, especially on this machine. I remember I saw that earlier. The update all upgrade. Yeah, I don't think I have. I've never done a git pull on any of these repos. Where is that? Underscore upgrade. It's going to be on the top. Okay. Because you don't need it to rebuild if you upgrade everything. Or, yeah. Keep in mind too, when I ran configure before, it failed because some of the, that's what I think these errors were up here. This one I'm still getting, I'm pretty sure, on the config. But these errors, where were the other ones? I know I've been doing a lot. Up here, these errors, when it was running like the build commands, is likely because I didn't have your hard-coded C drive dist directory in there yet. I'm not sure why you're getting the font missing area. Was this folder configured? This folder, clarity? Just put the external, then configure. Okay, I'll do it again. That might take a bit. Though I noticed it's faster on the second run. We're still getting the toolchains error, even though I have Visual Studio. Just the latest downloaded. But we'll ignore that. It's been fun. I have typically when I'm streaming, I complain just that there's so many things for this setup. And it's not so much a complaint about like that there is the setup. There's just so much stuff to this and it's overwhelming. So I'm hoping to dumb it down and simplify the pipeline. But we'll see how successful I am. Yeah, like I'm even imagining splitting this into roles so that it's easier to, you know, spin up things without having to worry about spinning up other things. Because you have like the whole kit and caboodle with this quick start, right? Like you can compile everything in the system with this. And another quick question, 3D Studio Max, what version are you running? Are you like running the latest? I don't think 3ds ever got a free edition, right? It works up to 2010. Okay, so there's a hard limit. I don't know if that was mentioned in here. We might want to... So it mentions 3ds Max can be version 9 or higher. But I don't think it ever mentions the limiter of 2010. Because I was thinking, you know, I can always grab a trial of 3ds Max. And that's fine. I'm tempted to potentially some of those Max scripts. I want to see how viable they are to shift over into Blender. In one of my previous things I was working on, we did a lot of scripting in Blender. So I might be comfortable in doing a conversion of some of that stuff, but I'm not even touching level design and front end for a while. I want to make sure I can get the back end solid with basically just dev containers. Another quick question for you. Sorry, I have your attention, so it's fun to, you know, I'm rapid fire questioning. You know how you have the Linux build environment? So like in the dev container and or through the Azure pipeline, all the different tooling, like the unifier and everything else, does it all fully work in Linux? Like the Patchman and like, have you gotten a entire environment spun up just on a Linux environment? With all these Windows specific things on the quick start, I wasn't sure if Linux is more just a, you know what I mean, segmented build pipeline and not really a full orchestrated part yet. So the production server runs on Linux. Very nice. Client runs on Linux. Perfect. I kind of assumed because it did clean build. I'd be tempted to spin up a VM for that, but there is no quick start equivalent for... Yeah, that makes sense. Eventually, I want to see if I can get everything on Linux. So, basically the quick start, if you set up Docker for Windows, it also does all the Linux build targets. I saw that. Obviously, you can see here I'm skipping the Docker desktop step for now, but you can also see that this succeeded at least in running config again. I'm assuming this has text. Oops, that just closes it. So it has text about the font directory, but we'll see what happens now we start again. Yeah, we're still getting the error about the... Does the log file go here? No. Does it go into pipeline? Yeah. Okay. I'm starting to get my head around this quick start thing. So obviously path file not found. It doesn't actually say the path it's attempting to load it from, does it? Where was this at? The language? Okay. String not found in language. Oh, so this is like a locale lookup. I see. So with that in mind, I'm assuming like obviously language code is being loaded by something and then it derives that data. I mean, there's the fonts themselves, the notice ends and stuff in the pipeline. Each locale has a font set. By the way, have you actually tried running Ryzom through a X window on Windows? You know, like a remote X window? I don't think that'd work too great with the Direct3D game, but Since I usually stream on my Windows box, I mean, I could just restart over into Linux and then have the GUI and stuff. But yeah. But that's good to hear that you're using Linux for production. And you never did give me that link, by the way. The core, you said one moment for the link to the server. Because even if I had an existing system that I could just log into and kind of A/B test against or compare, that would be nice. Because I know that Ryzom Live is its own beast. Because I've seen videos, a lot of the videos are like 12 years old on YouTube about Ryzom Core. And I'm assuming Ryzom Core is a lot more, nuts and bolts. It's a lot more bare minimum. And that's fine, because I don't know if you've heard what I'm planning to do, but once I have the baseline done, I'm going to be hacking the shit out of this. You think that they failed because of the build errors that I skipped over. So the question is when I run config again, is it skipping them? Because I didn't get the errors this time. Or should config attempt them again? And if they are skipping, then is there an option I can flip to rerun? Oh, the Visual Studio error. Oh, okay. So let's see if we can figure this out then. So let's go ahead and find this line and maybe do some print debugging on it. Find vstudio line, what, 151. So there's this highest check, and we have an index out of range error, I believe is what it's saying on Toolchain's line 8, index out of range on the list. Let's just do a quick Copilot, sanity check, and let's see if it at least like this. However, found still needs to be populated with the element, and if highest is 0, 0, 0, the highest would be 0, which means it would default to 140. I think. This is weird logic. If sub is greater than highest VV, sub sorry, I'm trying to decipher Python on stream, but you know what I'm going to do? I'll just hard code it. Well, okay, so these are value maps that is iterating a list called found via studio. Let's even just do this. Oh, just comment it out. Okay. Well, let's try that. Let's, okay, so where's this path? Code tool quick start. Okay, so this has the find vstudio file. We can open this with just Notepad, because I don't have code installed on here, and Visual Studio is overkill for this. And then found loop, where is it at? Found Visual Studio, it's line 131. Okay. Is this the same code? No, there's more of these. For VS and VIA, found Visual Studio. And it's after the setup line. Okay. Just under where you're at. Yeah. We're just going to comment this out for now. and see how config continues. Let's close some of these windows. And back here, keep it open. Let's see if this at least finishes the beginning. Nope, we get a key error. That was too aggressive. Can we hard code it to the specific key that we want, which is 143? What is this even looking for? Looking for vars, found 3. Can I just hard code this for the version? Can you scroll down? Scroll down on this view. Dead Zergling. What's good? I'm just having fun each day lately. I've been working on Ryzom dev environment spin up and experimentation. So it's been fun. How about you? How you been? I think you've been working on trees still, right? Okay. Well, he's checking. Let me I guess we could actually look at this file on latest prod. Because code. These plants also recovering from a surprise kidney stone removal I had done. Jeez, how big was the stone, dude? That doesn't sound fun. It's like up there, right? On some of the categories of some of the most pain that you can have. Tool. Quick start. 3 centimeters long, cylindrical shape. Did you feel it? Like, what was your indicator that got you to take it out? You know what they say, you were supposed to yeah, this seems what this code does is there are different tool chains in the 14 range. Yeah. And your Visual Studio environment will install one of each with the latest, 14XY. Yeah. And this is why you have a found, is you're trying to iterate each of these and find the one that is matching, assuming. And I haven't opened a solution in here in a while. These are all like super old. Grab seal. Of course, that's one not up. Let's do core. I don't know if this matches the about. Yeah, this is a whole different version. We're on 17. How do we even find this version number? Because it's trying to find 14. But that doesn't even match. Unless it's like a minor version. No, because the V goes for the tools. Lists the path. I think it's like looking for the actual was looking at this earlier, but I Visual Studio. This is not the right one. Or list in Found Visual Studio. What is Found Visual Studio actually set, by the way? It's going into Common 7. And for the major version, it ranges between 8 and 15 currently. But I'm on version 17, I think, is what this is really having a problem with. But it's essentially going Common 7, Tools, VC Express, .exe. Yeah, the versioning is weird. But you're essentially looking at VC Express to figure out what version this is, but you're also using x86 install. Microsoft Visual Studio. Okay, it's going all over the place. I do have 9 installed, by the way, but I'm hoping, I don't think that's not on my VirtualBox, so that's not it. But yeah, I see there, it has a listing of all the different paths it's doing. All right, so we can assume it's getting to here, but at this point, everyone is patterned the same, which is that it goes into Common 7, IDE, and there's a dev environment one, and what it's attempting to find, not .com, .exe, is essentially this. I'm pretty sure this is a validator of the file type. But see, this is saying versions with 17. Not correct. You're saying Visual Studio 2022 Professional, which I'm using Community, VC, Tools, MSVC. Okay. So I have 2 installed copies, and I'm obviously using the latest, which is 1442. And we can double check this with my VirtualBox. So this is running 44. So let's go back to you. I don't think there's anything. Let's just try that and see what happens. Still getting index out of range. Let me just do a sanity check real quick. So find vStudio line, there might be multiple found vStudios. You want to try 42 as well? The 42 was on my base machine, where the virtual machine, the VirtualBox is running. We're still getting the index out of range. You can see here, it's running 1444. because I literally just installed it. So this is the very latest. However, there's something weird here because we're still getting the over amount. Let's do this. This file, I do a couple undos. Let's restore this file to vanilla and let's compare it real quick. I just want to see if I've edited this on accident. Okay, so find Visual Studio, blah, 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 14. I did add a new line, but I think otherwise it's identical to the original. I can add prints. Let's do versions. That might be a good one. All right, so we get specifically version 1444. Now we're still getting error though. We can obviously assume we're getting to this line. So let's now print SPL. And okay. So SPL, if the 0 is 14, which it is in this case, then add another 0 to high. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's used as a hot index. There we go. Okay, do I need to do anything else with config, or should it now just run? Okay. It should be pretty fast. The only part I'm a little concerned about is when I originally ran the config from scratch, I got errors during some of the build chain steps. As you saw, I screenshotted them all. And ever since then, if I rerun config, I never get those errors anymore. So I don't know if there's some sort of cache check that skips it. But yeah, let's see though if fixing that will cascade and fix the font issue. Thank you, by the way. Definitely appreciated. It's possible, Creedlin. And yeah, Katemi, I don't know how you say your name. Katemi. If you can give me a copy of that Ryzom Core, I know I'm kind of like throwing you all over the place, but because ultimately my goal is now that I can get a database up, I'm going to be slowly moving towards the unifier. Who's here? Anyways, I'll be slowly moving towards the Linux dev environment. And the truth is, though, I'm being very destructive with a lot of my changes. So hopefully it'll impact Ryzom Core root, like in good ways down the line. But for now, I'm just kind of going my own route. So it'll be interesting to see how far I get and how bad it goes. But anyways, okay. So I didn't see any errors. It finished and it says ready. Okay. PowerShell. I can do that for later. Let's go ahead and run the dev. Still getting that. The new terminal UI? I don't recognize what you're saying. This is Windows 10. Is this what you're referring to, like this guy versus that? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm running 11 on my base OS, but I installed 10 on that machine just because it's a throwaway. I just wanted to have an environment I can throw it all in there. There's a bottleneck in the print output of the old one. But that shouldn't like hurt anything. It would just obviously make it a little hard to debug the output. Let's go ahead and close that one. Yeah, it just goes slower. That's fine. It's on a virtual machine. I'm not exactly expecting the moon here, you know? Speaking of, I can usually get this to shrink and grow. There we go. So, we're still getting the issue. We can run like debug, I guess. Well, maybe not. That has other issues. Let's try dev again. We get a flicker, and then we get the font issue still. It's a good question. Friedland, so you're currently at the unifier step, right? We can backtrack, and I can review some of my other steps real fast, because WebOn worked for me. We're going to run that again real fast. Is this prompting every time? I don't think I need to worry about the private network thing. Okay. And I think I already have it bookmarked with like the register screen. Oh, that's fun. Probably because it's not truly started. Oh. So this baked with my old directory on it. Goody. And then config doesn't update that path. Ugh. So moving it, obviously I didn't go from scratch. I just moved the directory. And so now some of these require onces are in bad paths. That's great. Okay, but let's go to the shard unifier. Let's see if it launches now. It does. So this wasn't launching before. It was just silently failing. So this is technically significant progress to what I had before. Holy Windows. The machine is not being very happy right now. Trying to hit these allow accesses. Yeah, this machine is low spec, but I mean, it's running. So that's all green. That was this step because I already did all the pre-startup stuff. Then we can switch the SU tab, which it already did automatically. then you can run the shard mainland. Guess I'll try that. But yeah, Creelan, it's possible when you fix the toolchain that you'll get past that unifier step, because that's the only change I've really done, other than I changed the path, I guess. But what are you using for management on your Linux prod environment for all these different processes? Like, what is your unifier / serve variant? I'm just curious. Why are 14 by 30 and 14 by 40 both 143? Okay. So you're using Patchman as the manager. Got it. Have you considered, just off top of your head, of running like a Kubernetes system? Was there any like potential reasons you weren't? So it launches all the server-side processes based on a central config. Because one of my questions, and maybe this is more of a design concern, is does, you know, the Ryzom infrastructure, does it ever scale horizontally? Like, are there scenarios of instances that need to have multiple copies, right, to manage the load? I'm honestly not super familiar even yet about like how the sharding works. You know, like if you have a persistent area, do you ever do instancing of an area? So the front end server, you can install multiple for client connections. AI, I'm going to write notes on this, by the way. Did I have a to-do on here? I thought I did at one point, but I think I have it on server. So AI front end can be multiple instances per. Yeah. And no, I'm 100% sure Kubernetes didn't exist in 2004 when Ryzom was released. I'm just, I've noticed. Yeah. I've noticed that generally speaking, oh wow, we just had like a random reboot of the GPM service and the EGS. Yeah, we're getting like file not found errors. I don't know if that's normal. Yeah. Is that in the quick start, by the way? No, but that makes sense. I don't know if program, honestly, just allow everything. I don't care. It's a virtual box. So it seems to be booting up. It says it may take a while. Or wait, not that one. Yeah, it may take a while on the first run. Okay, it's probably just we did this for the first time, so this is just going to take a while to, you know, get all the different things going. Yeah, so Ryzom Core, obviously, you're kind of constrained because you're trying to replicate the OG as much as possible. Where me, I'm not afraid to go in and be like, you know, these 3 instances don't have a heavy load. They're not really doing anything specifically that requires its own instancing. So I'm not afraid to like merge, you know, different processes together just to simplify life. Yeah, this is like insane. The amount of just windows and junk. Still getting the pop-ups. This might be a existing one. Might be time to release an updated quick start with this weird VS. Yeah, remember, I'm still using the original one you made. I haven't touched it from the quick start 4.0 pre-3. I've not pulled down a single file change, so this is vanilla. Your externals are like 3 years old now. Anyways, we're going to just see if this boots up. I'm curious how it does. But I guess another question, because I haven't gotten far into Ryzom as a game, like on the live servers, is does the game have an instancing system where like you enter a dungeon and then you have like caves and like its own instancing for a dungeon? Is there ever a scenario like that with the original Ryzom? Or is it all open world? You know, all content? Wonder if it's struggling with your available resources on the VM. It's possible. I could pop that open. It can do instanced areas. Okay. At some point, I'll actually play on Ryzom Live more to acclimate myself. Yeah, I'm running out of memory. Whoops. It's probably reboot cycling. I can increase the RAM that it's using because I don't think it's even allocated for a ton. I mean, it's using quite a bit, but Visual Studio Code is using just as much. I have so many freaking windows open. That shrunk it a lot. And even Waterfox. Usually I can just do this. And that should shrink Waterfox. Yeah, it's still about a gig, but still. Okay, there are no such areas in game aside from guild halls, and the Ryzom ring scenario also use the instance mechanism. Okay. My Ryzom Core install is on my desktop, and my office is a mess right now, so I need to clean up before I can check things. No rush, dude. If I had to guess, especially if I can hit some big milestones, there may be an influx of people interested in development on this machine, you know, this setup. Just because the area that I used to contribute, yeah, I think we're just chain rebooting with memory problems. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and shut down the machine. Hopefully it doesn't hurt the setup. Because I want to increase the RAM. Yeah, this machine is not happy right now. Yeah. Because I have 32 gigs. And right now, this instance is using 5 gigs. So I can likely go up to even like 10. And let me restart. maybe just adding RAM will help it. I think I can, yeah, I have 10 free, so. I imagine over time, the memory requirements go up just because of Windows, and you know what I mean? It happens. Hopefully it boots. It does this usually on startup where the loading bar like freezes for some reason for a bit. I had this happen before. Yeah, it's allocating the 10 gigs. Yeah, see, now it's running. I don't know. The VM just freezes the machine for a bit before boot up. I may have a Windows box laying around somewhere that I can donate to the Ryzom stuff. But honestly, I'm going to probably move away from the core setup soon. I just like having it for comparison while I'm spinning mine up. Okay, so we're going to start the web on again, which we know has a bunch of paths that are broken. I wonder if there's a... Crap. I wanted this to open with Notepad. Because Visual Studio is just big and annoying. Are there any references in... Wait, not config. Was it config? I don't even remember. Whatever. Anyways, we're going to go back to the unifier once this boots up with the database. Okay, so we configured web. We're going to start the unifier now. As you can see, we have a lot more memory now. Okay, I think it's up. So next we run mainland. And this is where it was doing a bunch of weird restarts. Now it's possible it was intentionally doing those restarts and that's normal on boot up, but it just felt weird with how it was restarting because the whole unifier like serve program was rebooting and the memory was maxing. So I feel like it may have been more so a problem with out of memory. So we'll find out. Yeah, Creedland, the closest thing it does to recommending hardware requirements is the cloud instances that were recommended. Disk space. I hope it's not. I allocated a pretty good chunk of memory. Yeah, I still have 200 gigs almost free. But yeah, the disk space thing. Oh, you're making fun of the fact that all you know for hardware requirements is disk space. Got it. Which was insane, by the way. Yes. It goes from, it's like an 8 gig download that turns into 250 gigs, which is absolutely insane. Another question for you, Katemi. I'm still just exploring and learning a bit about the source code and stuff, but pathfinding, I couldn't find like nav mesh pathfinding in any form. I assume is Ryzom by default. I mean, it seems to be doing a best Z like ground discovery, but you're saying PAX has it. I was curious like how pathfinding is done on there. Oh, these are like hard to understand which one's which. Like I want server. Maybe if I do that. There's a combination of nav meshes and landscape layers with boundaries. Well, as long as there's nav mesh, I'm happy. I noticed the / or the right click follow command also was a little weird. Like just dumb, run to whatever the destination is. So I'm assuming you don't get the nav mesh for that scenario. Oops, wrong machine. So for regular landscape, you basically have Z layer every meter with boundaries where it raises lowers between layers or walls, and then it just traces on the landscape for visual height. For indoor areas, it's more like a nav mesh. That makes sense. See? Yeah. I was just curious about the like opportunity cost of adding in some form of modern, nav mesh tooling. I got to look at what exists first though, before I make any opinions, but adding in like recast would be awesome. Because, industry standard, just awesome for, especially for indoor stuff. And it's all C++. I don't know how easy it would be to integrate into the existing tooling, but it'd be a consideration. I said allow all these, but it doesn't matter. I can even ignore them. I'm pretty sure they'll communicate with each other even if they're not allowed. But see, we're getting a lot better status. See, they're all green. I never got to this. Before, it was just crashing over and over and over. Okay, so we have the 3 instances up. Got it. I have a lot to learn. So thank you for the like top level summary stuff, because yeah. Okay. Now we move on to shard ring. We'll see if this blows up and how much memory it ends up using. Because we're up to about 6 gigs on a base Windows 10 install. And we want to go to the DDS tab apparently, but I'll wait. until it boots everything up. But yeah, the work I've been kind of doing preliminary is I've split the repository into, calling it like Rune Harvest as a org. You know, I have server, snowball, shared, and stack and client. And then these are just copies from the original. And like shared, I've intentionally split out the things that are, you know, shared between server and client and snowball into its own library. And most of these repositories are designed ground up where they have their own base CMake list and only build the specific target. Like I'm even just manually flagging them for now instead of using a, I could use the presets, but, and then I'm just hard coding it all for the Docker dev container for now. I might tweak this to also work in Windows, but honestly, I kind of want to just move away from Windows. I'm being very aggressive in nuclear because, you know, it just makes life easier when you don't have to maintain support for multiple things. I'm not curious. I haven't looked, but there's a part of me that's curious about how hard it would be to take out Lua bind and just the liblua stuff and upgrade it to either Solar or some other modern derivative, because, you know, liblua and even like Lua 5.1 / Luajit, it's old. It's actually like out of commission. And I've done it before. I've done a conversion to Solar and it wasn't too bad. I did that with Riximu. I think on the server, I did a Solar. Sol 2, sorry. Not Solar. So this is in a different code base, but I could probably leverage something similar. But yeah. Okay, so it's still booting up. Benar says, so is the Ryzom game an open source? And if so, does that mean random people can improve upon the game? That is exactly what it means, Benar. Historic, long story short, a French company made a game called Ryzom back in like 2004, and the company went bankrupt. But a lot of the developers and the original founders were interested in open sourcing the MMO when it was finished. So it's a very large set of code that end to end was AGPL v3'd, which is the similar license that Ikemu uses. But for me, the key highlight is that the client is fully AGPL v3'd. So you can try Ryzom now, Finar, on Steam. That is a derivative by, I think it's called Windgate, who was one of the primary companies to acquire like rights to the original code. And they're still adhering to the AGPL, but with some caveats. Where Ryzom Core, which is the repository I'm cloning, is the, you know, true open source branch that's attempting to maintain full open sourceness. So what my intent with what I'm working on, once I can, you know, get in sync with what Ryzom currently has available and, you know, spinning it up, is I'll slowly deviate and maintain everything I'm doing open source as well. And, you know, there'll be opportunities to PR some of these changes to Ryzom Core if desired. But otherwise, I won't be constrained by the Ryzom Core limitations. Like, you know, you're trying to maintain the existing infrastructure and stuff. I can kind of go wild with it. And I'll likely make Ryzom, or I'm calling it Rune Harvest. It was just a random name I made, but Rune Harvest is slowly going to be turning into a new MMO, is my theory. And yeah, the saga of Ryzom That's right, the OG. So yeah, if you want to try the game out, Fanar, and kind of just explore it, you can hop on Steam and try out the live variant, which is made by, or is maintained by Wingate, and you can at least kind of experience it. There are a lot of clunkiness to it. You do, Keston. Awesome. I might have some veteran questions for you on Ryzom as far as, gameplay and stuff. But essentially what I'm attempting to do is that exactly, Fanar, is I want to take kind of the mentality that we've had at Ikiimu and see if I can apply it to Ryzom. So we'll have a baseline database, server setup, everything to spin up a machine. But the difference is, like, unlike Ikiimu, where we are locked for the client, right? We are dependent on live for the client, which is closed sourced. We now would have full open source access to the client. So I can already guess that once I get some of the foundation down, I'm going to do a massive cleanup on controls, movement, probably add jump, make strafing and backstepping cleaner, and just, full propagation across that. I'm also probably going to skin out like the action system where you edit the skills and do the skill-based leveling. It's going to be a new game, and it'll likely be inspired by the Ikiimu code base and mechanics. That'll be my fallback, just because I know if I maintain that standard, we'll probably rally a bunch of developers later. You want like over shoulder camera? So here's the thing. I don't know if you played EverQuest, Katemi, but EverQuest and WoW and a lot of the MMOs out there kind of follow the same generic cookie cutter, controls for movement and kind of expectations. So if I had to guess, down the road, there will be a lot of hacks, kind of like what you said, which is the scroll mouse, making it so you can zoom out to third person. The key thing is once we get the foundation out there, and if there's enough interest, anybody can hop in here and start editing. There's actually a lot of random people that hop on the Ikiimu community. It's pretty large, specifically contributors and stuff. There's so many people that are tinkering, even on the client side, when it's all closed sourced, like modders and people that are just trying to, milk as much out of the client side as possible. And I'm one of them. So I believe there's an opportunity for Ryzom to be used as a new baseline and kind of marry what Ikiimu is lacking and design this like new, basically a Ryzom 2.0, where we're heavily guttering it and kind of merging the two projects into one in a sense, but using Ryzom as the baseline because it's fully open source and slowly evolving it into a generic RPG MMO is kind of what I'm imagining. But yeah, because it seems like Ryzom has all the components, like, especially because you said, yeah, there's instancing, there's dungeons. There's a lot of opinionated changes in Ryzom that I think didn't age very well. And those would be opportunities to just clean up because we have full open source. Like, I keep reiterating that, but that's massive. I'm used to like, oh, I want to change something with the camera. I need to open up IDA, start looking through all the camera hook functions with reverse engineering, make detours and start overriding memory to make that happen. And that compared to just, oh, I can just rebuild the client and, change the logic for the camera. That's night and day in effort. Wow. 250 on all your skills. Very cool. Yeah, frankly, my thought was once that lawsuit occurred, Xiao, I said, there is nothing about EverQuest that makes me feel motivated to continue contributing to it for either sake if this is the route that it's going to go. The high support that Daybreak had before with their, the EMU community made me feel more comfortable to contribute all the things I was doing. However, after this lawsuit and all the headaches that are going on with it, regardless of how it results, I just said, I'll step away and we can focus, elsewhere, these efforts. And, yeah. And then that's kind of my thoughts. And I imagine there will be people that are like-minded. So it's a big project, though. I don't expect myself to make all this happen. But I felt it was easier to take Ryzom and mod it than it was to go from scratch. Because I know there's a ton of projects out there that are trying to make like a client that connects with EQEMU from scratch. And that is just a massive undertaking. I would rather, take an existing system and mod it and, transplant code where possible. Or even take advantage of what Ryzom has, because there are features in Ryzom that I actually like, that are improvements even to the EQ client. So, we just have a full open slate of opportunities, how I see it. We can take the best of both worlds is how I see it. And then continue. We have a private Ryzom Classic fork as well that replicates the original state of the game, plus just ease of life improvements and fixes. See, that's interesting. So the problem with me is I have zero Ryzom experience. I'm the opposite of Keston, where I never even knew about Ryzom. I think I may have heard of it once or twice, but I never even started it up once in the past. Which is interesting because I've played a lot of MMOs, especially in the early 2000s and pre-2000s era. I'm still a huge fan of games like Ragnarok Online, Lineage 2, Anarchy Online, Dark Age of Camelot. You name it. There's a lot of that era MMOs that I just ate up. So the fact that Ryzom, though, is in a position where they want that AGPL v3, I'd honestly be happy if some of the improvements that go in the Rune Harvest fork end up back in Ryzom Live, which is the Wingate project. I'd be happy. They really like the movement control improvements we did. Sweet. That's what's nice about AGPL 3, right? If you introduce something cool, Katemi, about the Ryzom Core feature set, we could obviously copy it over and do our iteration. Sharing that knowledge and code base is going to be awesome. So at this point, though, it's going to take me a while just to get everything spun up and kind of orchestrated the way I want. However, I'm not really doing huge code changes. I'm more just modularizing it, and then just cleaning up some of the build pipelines to work with that in mind. So, right, Creelan? That was pretty impressive. But it sounds like the bottleneck from what Katemi says is that their ECS service, which is the combat and entity management, that doesn't scale horizontally, which could be a consideration, because I'm pretty sure in WoW, they have it where once you hit a certain limitation, it'll actually shard the world instance and make it where entities can interact with specific instances of the world and do so without necessarily being in a different world per se, like a seamless EGS instancing. That could be something to consider down the road if needed. Tibia. Yeah, I remember Tibia. That was a good one, Fanar. I played it a little bit. Man, there's so many out there. Exactly, Creelan. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I just hope we hit an opportunity where I want to see if I can simplify this quick start, because this quick start's too much for most developers to onboard onto. I would love to, maybe even spin up some dedicated dev machines for people just to work on the client with and, do modding, and then just have a pipeline focused on client side, editing and improvements. And then on the same respect, make another pipeline for server. And then Katemi, hence EGS responsibilities just need to be limited to anything that's strictly central. Yeah. I feel I need to sit down and really size up every service. I started writing readmes, by the way. Well, AI did. Oh man, I opened a path and there's just so many files. Where is it at? Yeah. I do it like this, where it just summarizes like the different sections and structure and kind of the features for like AI service, which is enough to kind of just at a glance kind of get an idea of what to find in this repository. So like if we do EGS README, this is what Copilot did in like 2 seconds. So it manages all the core game entities, which is player, NPCs, guilds, etc. It has persistent data handling for that, and including world state. It also manages inventory, trade, resource gathering systems, mission, fame, event. Yeah. Ryzom Live Team is just throwing their new event hacks into EGS, and their server lags all the time. Yeah. So, just as an FYI, Ikiimu, which is a private server that, you know, works with EverQuest clients, has Zone, which is essentially EGS AI, you know, everything persistent, I guess you'd call it. And then they have World, and World is literally the bridge between zones, and also character select, you know, connect, handshake, right? And then you also have login, and that's just off layer, server select. This is essentially their simplification of everything. So there are some issues with this design, specifically communication. And in fact, down the road, EverQuest added a secondary form of communication, and they call it UCS. It's the Universal Communication System. I don't know if it's communication. So that's another instance that got spun up later. But anyways, this has its downsides. Yeah, EGS does all the actions of player MCs. Yeah, so it's kind of the meat and potatoes of Zone. That is interesting, though, that movement is in one service and combat decisions is in one service, but then EGS is a different service. So, like, how are they communicating? Like, let's say, am I in range for attacking? You know, just as a quick example, for combat. How is that communication happening? Is it just the two services? Or does AI invoke EGS to do the attack? Like here, you can see there's a validation pass in EGS for validating the melee combat. I'm assuming that would have... Interesting. Is there like a pub subsystem with the event messages? Yeah. Which, by the way, in mine, it's going to be in shared nel /net. Net would be in the source directory of, yeah, because shared is, you know, copied across the whole thing. There's an event system in here. Anyways, let's see. Like, yeah, you have a message. Let's look for, like, I'm imagining you're using terms like combat or attack. I guess not. Just all services connect to each other and send attack EGS thing. Yeah. So it's kind of a form of like PubSub or like an event-based system, which is actually, it kind of reminds me of like New Orleans. They have a system that's kind of similar to that, because that means that you can do replays potentially, where like if you record every event, you could potentially replay it later for like testing scenarios, or even like for save state systems. But I don't think that's obviously part of the Ryzom chain, but I've seen this, the event based. I'll have to see though how there is a recorder service. Yeah, message recorder. So it just can write the events to a disk, it looks like. And it just serializes the stream, it looks like, into a buffer, and then has like a replay. Yep, there's a replay. That's interesting. I think I need to do analysis, but I would love to squish a lot of these services. And also, I would love to not have to manage what Patchman is doing right now. In fact, did I take Patchman out? I thought I kept it. Looks like I might have. That was an aggressive change, but... Wait. Ryzom Core. So Ryzom Core inside of Ryzom as server, as source, as Patchman. Yeah, I took out Patchman. Probably a very aggressive change, but from what I remember, Patchman didn't have anything truly required. It was more just an orchestrator. So basically the networking between services is the message. Right. However, so to me, what I'm going to probably put time into soon is creating a micro Kubernetes system and making it where, you know, Helm charts, deploy configs, and, you know, truly isolate every pod / container. And also, you know, make them stateless. Essentially prep them and use a, you know, bona fide orchestration tool instead of writing my own. Because Patchman is a slippery slope where, you know, you can write container / pods that maintain Kubernetes, pods, and that can communicate with each of the services and do health checks and help with orchestration. And I'd rather kind of specialize it with this in mind, because virtually every cloud service out there offers a Kubernetes layer for free. And writing a local machine that can do Kubernetes is actually not that expensive either. Once I get this all configured. The only service that has persistent data is backup service. That's the persistent service. Right. And all I do is, you know, make backup service have a external drive mount, right? That goes to like a blob storage or, you know, some sort of persistent store. And then, of course, you know, you can run SQL on a, you know, its own SaaS outside of SQL or outside of the Kubernetes instance. That's how you're supposed to anyways. Yep. So, I mean, it lends itself to it. And that's kind of why I took out Patchman. I can always refer to it with Ryzom Core, and I'll see about orchestrating all this into pods. And that also gives us a lot of interesting opportunities for scaling. Because, especially because I think a lot of these instances are scalable. Like you said, AI. Well, actually, what did you say? You said, yeah, AI and front end can be instance. I don't know what all front end does. Let's see. Front end service readme. What does it say? Oh, it didn't generate it. Let's generate it real fast for fun. It's easy to do. Summarize front end service into readme. That's all I do. And it'll just, I have a paid copy of Copilot and it's using 4.1, but honestly, that's enough. It'll scan all the function names and just write this real fast. And that's just enough to kind of, you know, get a quick summary. Like, oop, I meant to say this one. front end handles connections to client and the math that shows nearest entities and all data syncing. So in here, it says, provides network entity management prioritization for Ryzom Core servers. It handles communication between clients and the server, entity state sync, and efficient data transmission. So translates entities between client and server, manages client connections and message transport, implements quick, prioritization and processing based on distance and relevance, which is really what you were referring to with the math that shows nearest. And then also statistics. So it has, telemetry, as well as entity selection and visibility is handled by front end. So arguably, front end, if instance, is really the reason you can support 30,000 people in a shard, right? Because obviously, when a client connects, front end is really the one that's going to be handling a lot of the heavy lifting of the client and turning it into the back end. I see. So that makes sense. It's the translation layer. It's the service. That's like the RESTful endpoint of the stack. Interesting. But now that'll be fun to dive into. And yeah, I'm pretty much, I got to figure out some, debates still. Like, for example, with microkds, if I want to run an instance with GDB attached to it, I'm pretty sure I've done this before. You can run the process in a dev container and have it connect to a micro Kubernetes instance that's outside of the dev container in your main OS with the debugger attached. I've done that. Yeah, I have existing code that does that. So you can do full dev environment without ever having to, yeah. So what I'm hoping is that my stack repository with Quick Start, you can just stop one of the services and set it default in Visual Studio and then just hit play there. And that makes sense. And that's important, obviously, being able to attach to each service and debug it. You can essentially do the same with the Kubernetes environment I'm planning to set up. The big difference, though, is I'll be centralized on a kind of Linux environment for a lot of my commands. Which means GDB, Linux, and honestly, that's going to be lighter, thinner, easier. I don't think the cost for Windows is worth it, because even just spinning up instances in Windows is a pain in the ass. And it also lends itself to a kind of monolithic mindset, where Kubernetes, as your orchestrator, you're going to get a lot of like ingress, egress rule sets that I can set up. We can, configure each service to have, optimized settings, right, for whatever it needs for performance reasons. And even when you spin up Kubernetes, you can create, like, let's say EGS, right, is a big guy and it allocates more memory to utilize. If they're all containerized, you can actually set resource pools and set it where EGS only runs on, the high performance instances, where all the other services, right, can just run on the thin things across a pool. And, so like your cost can be mitigated. And then of course, if you need to scale up or do an upgrade, you can just use Helm charts, I'm pretty sure, to do deployment, because you said everything is stateless except for backup. And I'm assuming backup just communicates with messages to get data from what's in memory with EGS. But is EGS, is it doing any storage to the database? Like, does it have snapshot steps? I'm assuming it has to. I don't know. Oh, interesting. So in a way, all the services use backup service as kind of like a file IO via messages. I see. So what you're saying is a lot of the MMO data is flat files at the end of the day. They don't even use a database per se. The only thing that's really using database is the front end. Got it. Cool. This is super helpful. Hopefully you're enjoying sharing all this knowledge with me because I'm learning a lot, and I'm, I have a theory on like how I want everything going, but of course, once I start implementing it, there's going to be a lot of headaches and implications. There's a lot about this design I like, because it lends itself to a lot of really interesting modern solution integrations. Specifically like the event-based dispatching. How would you handle your mirror service memory sharing mechanism with Kubernetes? So mirror service, I remember you mentioning it before. Let me see if I have a README on it so I can. I don't. Well, let's write one up real fast. Because, you're saying though that like, yeah. So it synchronizes data across server components. How is it doing that? Let's see. Sorry, I'm going to read your thing before I even say anything. It's basically a giant in-memory Excel sheet with entity positions and other state that is synced between instances, right? And services installed on the same physical hardware all connect to the mirror service on the same box and just request the pin to the shared memory space. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Let's see what... I'm curious what Jipita will say about that. Let's just do... I have a service like this. My question is, how in a Kubernetes environment could you share memory like this? I don't think you get access to any of the, like, the kernel level optimizations for shared memory. Let me see what answer there is. There could be some bypasses you can do in a Kubernetes environment to do a similar thing. I'm not familiar with it though, so I'm not even going to say I know the answer. Yeah. You could also abstract out the memory access. Yeah. Well, and this could be an argument even still, because you mentioned that most of the services anyways don't have a need to be scaled. Like, they're not necessarily the bottlenecks. So you could do something like this is saying, where you create a pod, and then that pod has multiple containers inside of it, and each container can then use the memory service. They all kind of just live in the same instance. Yeah. Yeah, even just like a pub subsystem, but this is essentially going RPC route. That's funny that it's recommending specifically gRPC. Have you messed with gRPC much? I do it a ton because on my day job, I use Go a ton. gRPC is like a first-class citizen to it. So Google RPC is definitely my, but you could even do it with like a, message queue mechanic. So for example, each FES will just read from this shared memory space to get all the entity positions. The mirror servers already replicate to each other. Right. Because, okay, to double check what you're saying. So obviously mirror service, right? Is this a message based for a consumer, aka, I don't know, let's say like AI service, service, right? Is this message based, or is it like you said with the pointers with the memory? Then you have scenario 2, which is there's 2 mirror services, right? And they are communicating with each other. It's literal direct memory access, right? This is direct memory. Right. Is this correct though, this little diagram I'm doing? So the 2 memory services, the 2 mirror services are using the same memory, and then the messages for the consumers, or is this also direct memory? And also messages for updates. Okay. Okay, so this call has direct memory. Okay. Yeah, so this would work. This would actually work with this design up here. Which is, as long as all of these consumers can live on the same pod. My question is, does front-end service use mirror? Is it the main consumer of it, or are there other services that use mirror as well? Would you say when it comes to scaling that the biggest bottlenecks, what services are the biggest bottlenecks? What are the biggest bottleneck services for, like, when you have 30,000 players online, what parts struggle the most with, the whole ecosystem? Like, what parts need the fastest access? Obviously, front end is heavily dependent on. Okay. So, out of curiosity, when you did the 30,000 bench press, not bench press, bench stress test. Were you spinning up a lot of stacks of like front end service? And, what about mirror service? Were you spinning up a lot of those? Or did you hear about that at all? Like, where were the constraint points? Because, you can learn a lot about that. Oh, so they didn't even... Sorry, what is FES again? You might need to... Front-end services. FES is front-end service. Got it. Sorry, acronyms will take me a bit. Okay, so the front end is likely... Okay. I have to think about this. Because obviously what you could do in like a Kubernetes environment is sort of piggyback a lot of these services into the same. But ideally, after you do some analysis on the performance and stuff, you split off as much as you can out of this pod so that, horizontal scaling is easier. Because, you think about it, right? If all of these services, are on the same pod, then the moment this bottlenecks or becomes a performance issue and you need to shard it or you need to replicate an instance, all of this has to come with it, which means the weight of each of these instances is going to be higher. Yeah, so you have one mirror and two FESs per machine. And for the interim, when I do the Kubernetes setup, I'll probably just design it where one container would be that package. In practice, you just need one mirror per physical machine. Yeah. But again, I'll have to see, because you could treat anything that communicates via networking, right? Like if there's something that doesn't require this direct memory constraint, that can have its own pod. But I'm assuming mirror service is used all over the place. I'm trying to see what is a call I can use to see what I'll use as memory service. Wonder if I can do this. From mirror service, list every message type into README. It's also used for intermediary messaging synchronization for entities. Yeah. So can we even just search for this? No. I don't know how this file even found that request. I don't know what this is. Let's see. Yeah, there's some weird descriptions with architecture in here. This is fun. Wait for all Delta updates and receive Delta updates from the same tick. Receive tick. Send talk. Yeah, this even talks about what we're kind of talking about. On one physical machine, the services read and write properties in the same shared memory. It means changing a value by a service A is immediately reflected to the service B, and if they are in the same physical machine. A side effect is that a value can have change between two successful readings. In most cases, this is not a problem. For example, if the property represents a color or such of an unimportant property. However, for certain kinds of properties, it may be dangerous. For example, let's say the following code will lead to a crash because the value can become 0 at any time. Basically instances the value. It's funny because in a way, this is a form of ECS. There is an opportunity for a big re-architecture and use something like ECS, and we could potentially clean this up and make mirror service closer to like an ECS, where the state of each component and the final result to make like a system could, you know, be reflected for each entity. I don't know though if it's a good opportunity or not. That sounds like a lot of work. For the interim, I'm pretty sure what I'll likely do is use something similar to this. Basically a large Excel sheet. Yeah, I'll have to deep dive, makes decisions on, you know, what I'd recommend and how to. I just don't know enough yet about the whole infrastructure, but I'm learning a lot today with our banter. Because ideally, we move away from having heavy memory-based data sharing and kind of suffer through the mirror service having a desync, or even better, consolidating some of these services potentially. Even if they're sending messages to one another, if some of these services were just standalone and were considered one of the same, like I don't know how the memory footprint is on some of these. Let's do by memory. So you can see here, AI service, there's like what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 instances up, and each one is like 100 and something megs. 2 instances of iOS. Actually, there's 6 instances of AI. Oh wait, geez, there's a lot of front ends. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. There's a lot of junk. So we have 2 welcome, 2 tick, 1 unifier, 3 browsers, 2 naming, 2 mirrors, 2 loggers, and I'm assuming there's 2 of things just because they are what's the word? This is like simulating multiple instances. Am I running ring shard? I am. I'm pretty sure. This machine is very slow right now, by the way. I have the unifier, and I think this is the ring shard. Yeah, you can see the rings. Yeah. So I'm basically running 2 instances in one system, what that's saying. Okay. Do I normally not need to run the ring shard? Like, can I shut this down and it'll work fine? I don't know what ring is, by the way. What is ring? Oh, I see. I'll shut it down for now. I'm assuming that's what this is right here with the weird doodad placements and node things and the editor stuff. For that all to work, you have to have ring enabled. Launch the ring editor. Yeah. Got it. Anyways, okay. No, we've made a lot of progress and you gave me a lot of food for thought. For the interim, I'm going to continue down the path I'm doing, which is I'm going to try to streamline, spinning up all those services, getting dev containers running. I'm not too worried about the Kubernetes instancing just yet. I could always use Compose for the, interim. But I do want to make sure we can containerize as much as possible. And get ready for that scenario is what I'm kind of imagining. Because, yeah, I don't want to hurt general scaling and, the ability for this to scale up heavily. But also, I want to simplify things as much as possible. You know what I mean? It doesn't need to be this complicated, even though it has a lot of really cool features. So you can just try with, the sidecar idea. Yep. Just put that in my notes for now. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Ultimately, I need to, I want to see if I can get the client to run in Linux on one of my actual GUIs with Linux on it. I can always set up my share screen so that I can see one of my remote machines that's Linux that has a GUI. And I might as well just spin it up with that as a focus. And I can worry. I was working on a Win32 cross build, by the way. That was fun. I don't know if you saw me working on that or not. That was a very large undertaking. Right here. The Docker file is getting insane to get all the dependencies because for a MinGW build, so I cross-pile the client, specifically Snowball, so that all the dependencies are built in Linux. For Windows, I have to go in and I have to recompile all these with the MinGW flags on each of these build pipelines. So even Boost, because I guess you're using Boost minorly, and Lua bind. See, it's a nightmare. But you can see I was going down that path because the idea then is, like in your case, you're using the Azure pipeline, and you just spin up a. Is the pipeline in here? I don't think it is. I think it's only in the Ryzom Core. You're using. Where was it at? Isn't your pipeline right here? There it is. You actually have a matrix, and then you're just running a Windows image that has all the drivers enabled. And that's where you're getting all your DirectX stuff. And you even do it with Mac. Use our Luabind fork. Where's your Luabind fork? Lua features or versions? Oh. Okay. I'll keep that in mind. Thank you for the tip. I'm glad I talked about that. Have you looked at upgrading to Sol 2? Because this is, I think, the modern solution for Lua bind. Yeah. But there are some binding changes. I haven't even looked at like how you're using Lua binds right now. Heck, I don't even know if it's actually used in Snowball. Entities uses Lua. No. This says collision. Yeah, there's a chance I could remove that dependency. For Snowball. Which means I can skip all this, at least for the Snowball Hello World. That'd be nice. But yeah, I think client has... This is why I like, by the way, having it split, is I don't have to, you know, like I can control P or search, and I don't have to like worry about cross-contamination of paths. I can, you know, oh, I only want CPP files in Lua. You can see here, allow debug Lua. Here's your Lua bind. It's actually in Nel GUI. That's probably why I'm getting those dependencies. But because it's never called, I can probably skip the Lua. At least for Snowball. But for client, I'll need it. Yeah, you can see it's all over. And you can see Lua state. And you have a Lua manager wrapper. And Lua helper stuff. There's a lot of Lua bindings in here. 5,700 results. That'll be fun. Let's upgrade to Solar. I mean, Sol has its own state system as well. And I know it's relatively compatible, but I might do that at some point. Just upgrade it to Sol so it's modern and you can keep up to date with the latest fixes. Normally, Lua binds aren't that hard. You know, at the end of the day, if you abstract it out, it's all just, you know, binding functions and variables. And, you know, kind of doing this sort of junk. In fact, a lot of these implementations in like the Lua module and stuff could likely, you know, make new wrappers, re-implement these functions, but there are a lot. So, for another day. Anyways, I think I'm about to wrap up. It was fun streaming though. Hope you had fun, Katami, seeing me break down and break apart a lot of your effort. Heavily appreciated, by the way. I can tell you've done a shitload of work on this because your name's all over the place and you're also the expert, local expert on all this. So definitely appreciate it. What's your opinion on Hunter as well, by the way? I was looking at setting up that environment, but I kind of want to avoid it. And maybe for Windows, I was going to use like VC package if I could. Yeah, that's kind of how I saw it. I don't know. As you can see, I honestly prefer, let's just get MinGW32 going and then I can cross pile. And sure, you can't use Visual Studio to debug, but I mean, if anyone wants to do Visual Studio debugging, I'll make them have to generate their own solution files and, you know, put that support later. I want to just focus on everything works in a dev container. You know, you can GDB attach on everything. I can start making it where you can just, you know, have it set up currently where on server, you can just do like make run naming. I think I do a dash. Service, and it'll spin up a naming service, right? it does all the path configurations and stuff. Puts you in the right directory. That's kind of what I'm envisioning. I took out the Ryzom naming convention as well. And I'll do some more cleanup. I may make a source subdirectory. I'm just debating that still. This still says a bunch of Ryzom stuff, but I don't think those are actually accurate. Maybe they are. I might need to still clean that off. Yeah, I still add them. The packages are not named Ryzom anymore. Clean up all this junk. So it's still being considered Ryzom prefixed. And there's a lot of these actually. But I'll go through, clean that up. And it's important because I don't like having repetitive naming conventions. I know you use it on some of your startup batch files. Like you look for patterns of like, start all the programs that have Ryzom as their prefix. And I'm like, oh, painful. But yeah, you can see. I can just clean that off, go through each one. I think even server share and game share needs it as well. This is going to break a lot, but yeah, it was without prefixes before, but a bit annoying to browse task manager and so on. So that's why. Well, in my case, there won't be a task manager. Well, I mean, you could do PSOX, and I guess there is an argument for that. But I think in the long run with mine, I really want to see if there's opportunities to combine a lot of these programs. Because, especially because they're sharing memory anyways, there's a chance a lot of this code could just become, potentially similar to what I was talking about in the to-do, where, in EKEMU, there's just login and server and world. This style. I might do something similar where it's kind of like, you have front end, and then you maybe have like EGS, and then there may be another kind of like, just world, and see if I can simplify a lot of these mechanisms into these categories, based on responsibility. So like naming service would possibly be in world, mirror would be in world, monitor would be in world, logger would potentially be in world. It depends. I don't know the integration of that. Dynamic scenario might be front end. EGS would be, I'll have to figure it out, but a segregation like that just makes life easier across the board, because it's not like these services need to be standalone binaries. Even if they're communicating messages and that message just goes to itself, that's fine. But it makes processes easier. It's easier to debug because you'll just have one, binary that you have to attach debugger to, and then you can just breakpoint as it runs down the chain and not have to attach to multiple processes, right? To go down the chain of command and calls for the stack. So that's what I'm kind of envisioning, is just a squash. And it just makes it easier to maintain as a developer, because if someone comes into this brand new, you can, but then you also need to know what does who and where and how. And the learning curve for the current design is pretty high. It's not condensed very well. And that's not necessarily like a bad idea. It's just, I want to make sure I can make this where anybody that comes in after me and touches this code base that I'm working on, with some pretty rudimentary knowledge, they should at least have hints, right, of the different scope of responsibilities, and ideally those configs should be minimized. You know, it's easier to maintain 3 programs than it is to maintain 25, you know. So that's kind of the thought. And these will also probably reflect how containers work as well. You know, each pod and instance, like front end, right? This would have potentially mirror in it. And so every time you clone front end, you're basically cloning the memory share instance. In fact, it doesn't have to do memory share anymore because it's all in the same program memory space now. You see what I mean? Granted, I don't think that'll work because EGS and front end are sharing the same memory. Just make it better than it was when you got into this project before next person take on the daily task. I like your thinking, Zach. Yeah. There's no way I can make all this work. Like, there's so many projects and tasks to do. But if I can make a foundation where people can hop on and, spend a weekend wrapping their head around the basics and then do a quick edit and succeed, that'll motivate them to do more edits. And they can PR those edits, and then we can grow the improvement and even our development pool, right? Just by having a good foundation for architecture is how I see it, right? So, because this is too much. There's just too many segregations, and so I gotta sit down, wrap my head around all the architecture, and then see what I can do to simplify it. So, anyways, I'm going to probably end though. Thank you, Katami, I don't know how to say your name, to, hang out. Hopefully you had fun hearing my theory crafting and, teaching. And again, you're super appreciated that when you have time, you send responses to my thread. I made that thread just to kind of dump as I'm learning and figuring out stuff. And I'm always appreciative of any sort of feedback, criticism, negative or positive. Absolutely appreciated. And hopefully this helps everything in the long run. So cool. And then everyone else that's been hanging out, thank you. You learned something. Hope you're excited to see where this goes. We got 10 viewers, so y'all are appreciated. And I've been doing pretty good at streaming this every day at like 5 p.m.-ish Pacific, 5 or 6. Thanks for the streams and putting them on YouTube. I did learn, BSnip, that some of mine aren't auto-uploading to YouTube, so give me... I might see if I can take some that are recorded on Twitch and upload them to YouTube so we can keep the full series. This is like number 4, I think, of the series. And I'm having fun. That's the key thing, right? If I keep having fun, I'll keep trucking at it. And, as I wrap my head more and more around everything, we'll see if I can dumb it down, make it simpler, and get other people to onboard quickly and easily. And yep. Then hopefully we can start seeing some real contributions. So, all right. Take care, guys.